I'll try to be brief as possible and stick to the relevant events that are giving me this feeling, but the latest event happened last night and I didn't get much sleep, so apologies if I ramble or am unclear. My wife and I recently purchased our first home after the birth of our daughter. Everything was as you would expect the first few months. Painting, decorating, renovating, basking in our newfound slice of the American dream. You get the idea. Unusual things started happening several months ago. One day as I was getting home after work, I passed by a strange truck 2 or 3 houses down from ours. I say strange for a few reasons. We know literally everyone in our small neighborhood, and I'd never seen this truck/person before. There's no reason for through traffic to come down our street, and the truck was driving very slowly. Like put it in drive but don't press on the gas slowly. As I pulled in the driveway, the truck flipped a U-turn and came back towards my house. Getting out of my car, the truck crawled by and the driver stared daggers at me as he passed, then sped off. I don't like to judge based on appearances. And I like to think that I don't scare easily, but something about this guy's eyes gave me a bad feeling. Obviously this was weird. I mentioned what happened to my wife, telling her we should be more mindful about security. When I told her the type of truck, my wife said, "That same truck drove by and the guy stared at me when I got home this afternoon. I thought he was just being creepy and checking me out." I tried to tease her a bit to lighten the mood, calling her cocky for assuming any guy driving by was checking her out. I didn't want to freak her out, but I was definitely freaked out. We saw the truck a few more times over the next couple of weeks, either driving by slowly or parked down the block and facing our yard. But one day the truck stopped driving by, and we haven't seen it since. I sort of dismissed the whole thing as being paranoid. Then other things started happening. In the past month or so, my wife and I have been hearing tapping on the windows at the front of our house at night. It's happened 2 or 3 times to each of us separately, always around 10 or 11 p.m., and always a soft but distinct tap 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 tap. It sounds like knocking with a single knuckle on the metal part of a screen door, if that makes sense. The first time that my wife and I heard the tapping together was last weekend. We were in the front room playing with our daughter around 9:30, just about to settle her down for bed. Our front room has a large, almost floor-to-ceiling window running the length of the wall next to the front door, which faces the street. We were all sitting on the floor with our backs to the window, reading our daughter a book, when we heard it. Top, 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 top. Now our house is older. Creaks and cracks are not uncommon. But this sound was so distinctly intentional that my wife and I immediately looked at each other and bolted out of the room. I had my wife and daughter lock themselves in a back room while I turned on all the lights and did a sweep around the outside of the house. Of course, I didn't see anything and was ready to dismiss the whole thing as more paranoia over something that probably had an innocent explanation. Until last night. Around 9:45 we heard our daughter making noise in the baby monitor. I waited a few minutes to see if she would settle down, but when it became clear she wouldn't, I got up to put her back to sleep. The layout of the room is important to visualize this next part. This room is on the side of our house, but the exterior wall juts out a bit in an L shape, and the corner of this L is made up of windows. If you're standing in the door to the room, you're directly across from these windows in one corner, and there's a rocking chair in the other corner pointed towards the front of the house. One window faces the street, and the other faces our neighbor's house. A garden bed planted with small shrubs wraps around the outside of the house directly underneath. I was sitting in the chair getting my daughter settled down. I had a lamp on, so the room was softly lit. Once she fell asleep, I stood up to put her in her crib when something caught my eye. There was a figure standing about a foot away from the window, in the bare space between the shrubs and the house. They were staring at us. I didn't look long enough to see anything more than what appeared to be a man in a light gray hoodie standing a few feet away on the other side of the glass. Sprinting from the room, I brought my daughter back to my wife and I's bedroom, leaving her there while telling my understandably confused wife to lock the door. After turning off all the lights inside the house and turning on all the lights outside, I began moving from room to room. Peering out the windows into the darkness, I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Whoever it was must have taken off after seeing me notice them and make a quick exit. Obviously, I had some trouble sleeping after this. I spent hours checking security cameras and going from room to room looking out windows into the night, hoping but also not hoping that I would see anything that could explain what happened. This morning I went outside to the spot where the figure would have been standing. I thought maybe there was a plant or something that I mistook for a person. When I got to the spot, I realized the figure had to be standing exactly in a bare patch of ground about 2 feet in diameter, directly in front of that window. Part of me is still hoping that I'm being paranoid. The mind can play tricks on you in the dark, seeing things that aren't there. Especially when you're a sleep-deprived new parent. But with everything that's been happening, I can't shake the feeling that there was actually someone out there last night. When I was 15 years old, my family moved to a new state and into a new house. I ended up with the largest of the 3 upstairs bedrooms, one that had a bathroom attached and, interestingly enough, a door in the closet. Inside of my normal closet was a door maybe 2 feet by 3 feet in size. I have always loved the paranormal, and this door instantly reminded me of the one in the movie Coraline, so I was very interested. When opened, you could tell that there was insulation blocking the door, but had either been pushed out of the way or pulled. The door led to a small attic-like room. It was unfinished, bare wood, and was warmer than the rest of the house. I shut the door after not finding anything interesting about it and didn't give it any thought for the next few weeks. That is until one day I woke up and the small door was open. My initial thought was that maybe I had opened it and forgotten. I walked over, shut it, and went on with my day. The next morning, I awoke to find the door, once again, open. Now this time I knew for a fact it had been shut when I fell asleep. Trying not to read too much into it, I thought maybe it was one of my 2 siblings trying to mess with me. That wasn't really like them, to wake up in the middle of the night to prank me. But I couldn't think of any other logical answer. I asked them both numerous times and they were so uninterested that they simply said they had no idea what I was talking about. I even ended up scaring my little sister just from talking about it. That night I decided to lock the door instead of just shutting it. When I went to do just that, I saw that the side of the knob that locks was not on the side of my closet, but on the inside of the attic room. I found this very strange, as the room couldn't really be used for anything besides storage, and if that was the case it would make more sense to have the lock on the outside, where it would be easily reached. Nevertheless, I locked the inside of the door and shut it. I gave it a hearty pull and wiggle to make sure it was actually locked, and it stayed put. Confident that it was truly shut this time, I went to bed. In the morning the door was open. Seeing that small door in my closet wide open after locking it myself the night before was absolutely terrifying. It was at this point that I decided to tell my parents what had happened. Both of them laughed, joking that I had a ghost, and didn't believe a word I said. I was on my own. What happened next is something that I will never forget as long as I live. I'll preface this by saying I have never had sleep paralysis and have never had it since this story took place. I went to my bedroom to take a nap. It was mid-afternoon, so the sun was still out and coming through my blinds. I don't remember falling asleep, but I do remember opening my eyes and the room being considerably darker. I remember laying there, on my side, face to face with a dark humanoid figure sitting next to my head on my bed. It was just black, like a 3D silhouette. It was sitting cross-legged, mere inches from my face, and I couldn't even scream. I was frozen. It felt like hours, but was probably only a few seconds before the room was lit with the warm afternoon sun and the figure was gone. I was still laying in the exact same position and door was open. This was the last straw for me. I was completely terrified of that door and whatever came with it. I grabbed one of my scarves and tied the doorknob to the shelf on my closet so that it cannot be opened at all. Thankfully this worked. I moved out of that house 3 years later, but my little sister moved into that room after I moved out. My parents and sister moved out of that house a month ago, and up until the day they left, that scarf never left that door. I have never had sleep paralysis before. I don't know if that's what I experienced, but it never happened when the door was shut. About a month ago, I moved downtown into a new apartment with my boyfriend. It's been going great, and we loved having a smaller space together with our dog and cat. But recently we've been having weird stuff happen. For reference, we are on the bottom level. A few weeks ago, after work, I was sitting on my couch waiting for my boyfriend to get home when I heard my front door slightly open. At the time, I wasn't locking it so my boyfriend could just walk in without having to dig out his keys, etc. I thought maybe it was just the wind since the door has trouble latching anyway. I walked up to it and opened the door, and a man was walking up my steps but bolted away towards the opposite direction when he saw me. Weird. I didn't tell my boyfriend because honestly I thought nothing of it. Fast forward just a few days later, I was sitting on my couch playing with my Switch and I heard a noise from our back door that I'm sitting a few feet away from. All of a sudden someone ripped open our screen door and grabbed the glass sliding door handle to open it, but they ran away when I yelled, "What the fuck?" It happened so fast, and I was so shocked I didn't see what they looked like. I called for my boyfriend in the other room and told him what happened, and he grabbed his skateboard, yeah I know, our only defense at the moment, and went to check the front door. As he opened it I heard him say, "What's up man?" and then he came back inside. He told me a man was walking up our steps and turned to walk the opposite direction when my boyfriend opened the door, the same thing that happened to me a few days prior. I told him my experience and he got freaked out. I messaged a few of my friends and they offered to give us their Ring camera and suggested we get a better weapon than a skateboard. My theory is someone is scoping out our apartment knowing we're new. Definitely startled us and makes me on edge every time I'm home alone, constantly glancing out the back door making sure it's still locked.